Hey everyone, and welcome to my Lilac Hill. My name is Brittney. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here, welcome back. I wanted to do something just a little bit different today. I don't know that I have ever done just a great job of explaining why I got started with homesteading and kind of where I plan to take it. So I wanted to just kind of walk you through that, give you a little bit of backstory on me, and I'll also try to share some pictures of my journey. Like I said, I've been homesteading for about 9 years now, almost 10, but I have been wanting to farm in one way or another my entire life. So today is the day I get to give you guys all of the details on that, how it started and where I'm at right now, and also where I plan to take it. So I've got my tea here, I'm ready to go. I hope you'll join and I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so to give y'all a little bit of a backstory, I did not grow up in the country. I actually grew up in the suburbs just outside of Kansas City, Missouri, and I did not grow up necessarily in a farming family. So how I got kind of introduced to even just the country lifestyle, my grandparents lived out in the country, and my uncle also raised cattle and lived on a farm out in the country. So I had just a little bit of an introduction from a very young age, from about the time I was 3 years old, or old enough to, maybe even younger than 3, old enough to run down the hill at my grandparents' house to their neighbor's cattle field. I was doing it. So it's something that I can't remember a time that I didn't want to live in the country. But I was very much raised in the suburbs. I was not a farm kid. I was a wannabe farm kid stuck in the city. So it's just kind of been a lifelong dream of mine, and that's really kind of what sparked the initial interest. But my journey is a little bit more complex. Growing up, I spent a lot of time in the summers with my grandparents, and we would just be kind of hanging out in the country and living a much slower life than I was used to all year round in the suburbs. And it was so nice. I have so many good memories of my summers in the country with my grandparents and their neighbor. They lived in a small town and just kind of on the edge of that small town. And so they did have a neighbor kind of up the road a little bit, and he had a cattle field kind of right behind both of the houses. And so from the time I was really young, I would just race down to that fence and just sit for hours and watch his cows, or I would sit in my grandma's backyard or on her porch and just watch the cows graze. And I just remember feeling so at peace in that environment. And my mom is not quite like me in the sense of, being country or anything like that. So it kind of scared her that from such a young age, all I wanted to do is be in the fields with the cows, because she obviously didn't want me sneaking off and getting hurt. But that's all I've really ever wanted to do, is just be out in the fields. And I love being outside. I love working outside. So really, I just feel like I was destined to end up on a farm. I really enjoyed my summers, and occasionally I would talk my grandparents' neighbor into taking me out into the field and showing me the ropes and helping him with his cows. And I don't know if he would admit it, but I think he liked it just as much as I did. And I also kind of, as I got older, started working with one of the veterinarians in town, volunteering, I should say. I wasn't an employee, I volunteered. And the biggest reason for that is knowing that I was a kid that grew up in the suburbs and my family did not farm. I wasn't going to inherit a farm. Obviously, land is very expensive. Even back then, it was expensive. So financially, I knew I was gonna have to figure out some way to be involved with farming. And the idea that I had come up with at the time was, if I can't have a farm of my own, I can at least work with livestock and work with farmers every day. So I decided I was going to be a large animal veterinarian. So all through high school, I volunteered with several veterinarians, small and large animal. And I even volunteered for a summer at a dental office so I could learn the ins and outs of cleaning teeth. Because if you're going to apply to vet school, you have to have a lot of volunteer hours and you have to really show that you're dedicated to it. So I was really trying to build all of those hours and gain that experience for my application for vet school. And then all through high school, I really didn't fit in at my high school. I had a very city, suburbs, wealthy high school that I attended, and I was kind of the odd man out. I didn't fit in with a lot of people. In fact, I was made fun of quite a bit for being country. Even I wasn't country, I didn't live in the country, but just having that mindset of wanting to be in the country and wanting to farm. And my school had not had an FFA chapter up until about the time I was a freshman. It was a very new chapter, but being in FFA in a school like that, we all got made fun of. And you know, FFA has changed a lot over the years, but it really did have a great impact on my life. And so I really tried to be as involved with that as I possibly could. I did hold a leadership office, and I did try to go to every event possible and just kind of build that resume and meet as many people as I possibly could, because I really wanted to get into vet school. And then my senior year, I got accepted to the University of Missouri. So I was gonna start my undergrad in animal science. So my freshman year, I got all my classes lined up in animal science, and at that time I was still incredibly focused on vet school. And so there's a certain list of classes you have to take in order to apply to vet school. So I was making sure I had all of those, and I was trying to get involved in some extracurricular groups and clubs and things like that. And as I kind of got into it, it was about the end of my freshman year, first part of my sophomore year, when I realized that I was not as much interested in being a vet. Number one, the hours. I knew that I've always wanted a family. I always wanted to be a mom and a wife, and I knew that if I was going to be a vet, one of those was gonna suffer. I either wasn't gonna be able to give my full effort into being a vet, or I wasn't gonna be able to give my full effort into being a mom and a wife, and I did not want that. So I started just kind of thinking things through and trying to figure out what it is that I really want. I was still incredibly passionate about farming, and I just was really struggling to figure out how I was gonna make it happen. And so I got involved in a couple of different clubs. My sophomore year, I was in swine club, and I was in dairy club for a short period of time, and then I joined I did a semester long with a group that was studying pasture raised dairy. And I really just was like, no, I'm not super passionate about being a vet. I am incredibly passionate about farming. And not only was I not super passionate about being a vet and working those hours and doing that type of work with animals, I wanted to work with animals, don't get me wrong, but I just didn't want to be a vet. I have a lot of respect for veterinarians, so I'm not diminishing the career at all. It's a very respectable field to go into, but you have to really love it. And I didn't have that passion anymore. And I also couldn't pass organic chemistry. That was a big part of it too. I took organic chemistry twice, and I did pass the second time for university standards, but not for vet school standards. So it wasn't meant to be. It was not in the cards for me. And so as I got more involved in these farming related clubs, it just solidified the fact that farming is my passion. And so I decided I've got these two areas of focus. I've got dairy production and I've got swine production that I am really, really, really invested in. So I took a bunch of classes in both of those fields and finally kind of narrowed it down. I did work a little bit on a dairy farm, and I worked on a swine farm for a while. And I just kind of narrowed it down to, I want to try working in a commercial swine farm. Now at that time, keep in mind, I grew up in the suburbs, did not have a farming background, and I was attending the university, and I don't want to talk bad about the university. I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. I learned a lot, and I made a ton of connections. I think the biggest thing I took away from college is all of the connections and resources that I received just by going. So I'm not diminishing that at all. But the university is funded by certain interest groups. And at that time, it was primarily commercial agriculture. And it may not be quite as much. I'm not there anymore, so I don't know. But when I was there, it was really focused on commercial agriculture. So that was what I was taught. That was what I knew. And so that was what I went into. And I worked on a couple of different commercial swine farms for a few years. And I enjoyed it for a while. I really enjoyed it for a while. In fact, I worked my way up to manager, not like a general manager. I was managing a farrowing unit for a while. And I enjoyed it, but there was definitely some certain drawbacks to that as well. And the more and more I got into it, it just wasn't that picturesque image that I had of farming. When I was a little girl and was dreaming about farming, and some farmers might laugh at me for this because I romanticize farming, and I understand why some people don't, but I am fine with it. I have this image in my head of going out and milking a cow or collecting eggs and having this beautiful farm and stewarding the land. And so while I was working on a pig farm and I was working with all these pigs, and I enjoyed it, I learned a lot. I wasn't feeling fulfilled. So I was still just left like, okay, well, vet school didn't work out, and now commercial farming isn't working for me. So I was really just kind of at, I guess you could say, a turning point. I didn't know exactly where I wanted to take it. This was about 2014 when I was kind of like, okay, commercial farming is not for me either, but I'm still super passionate about farming. So what am I gonna do? And so the last farm that I worked on was in central Missouri, and I was living in a really, not a really small town, but a small town. And a lot of my coworkers lived in the surrounding areas, which were more rural. And I would hang out with them after work sometimes, and they were just doing a lot more with like vegetable gardening, and that was just their way of life. And growing up in the city, I never really saw that. I didn't see people gardening in their backyards. And yes, my grandparents lived out in the country, and my grandpa grew tomatoes, and my grandma grew a beautiful flower garden. She was a fantastic landscaper. Or I should say, she's still alive. She doesn't landscape as much anymore. She's, getting up there in age, and her mobility is not the greatest. She still tries, and her yard is still beautiful, but it's just not like it was in the glory days. But she was more interested in flowers and landscaping, and my grandpa, he did grow his tomatoes, and so I saw that. And my mom always grew, kind of what I refer to as a salsa garden, tomatoes, peppers, that kind of thing. And my mom also did landscaping as well, but I never really saw anyone growing a vegetable garden, eating fresh out of it every day, and canning that food to preserve for winter until I started hanging out with some of the coworkers from that pig farm. And so thinking back on all of this, and it's just a crazy journey for me, but it really just makes me realize how much everything happens to you for a reason, and every chapter of your life is meant for something. And I believe that chapter of my life was just meant for me to explore different avenues of farming, different ways of being involved in agriculture, and just meeting people and seeing different ways of doing it. And so when I was hanging out with these people and I was seeing this small town lifestyle for the first time, on a regular basis anyways, I really enjoyed it, and I was jealous of these beautiful vegetables that they were growing. And so that very first summer that I lived there, I was like, I'm gonna grow a vegetable garden. I'm gonna throw some things in my backyard, and we're gonna grow some food. So I planted some tomatoes and peppers, which I had grown a couple of times with my mom before, so I knew how to do that, and that was no big deal. But then I thought, well, I want some carrots and I want watermelon. And cucumbers. Those were the other things I tried for the very first time. And was so ignorant when I started my gardening journey. I literally just threw seeds in the ground in May and just thought that they would grow and produce all of this food, and then I was disappointed when it didn't. And my friends, they were harvesting like bountiful harvests, and that really sparked my interest. And so that was about the time that I really started researching how to grow food. And the guy that I was dating at the time, his parents grew a pretty decent sized vegetable garden every year. And so I would kind of watch what they did and take some notes, and kind of got a little bit of a start. And so I expanded my gardening efforts at the house just a little bit. I didn't go crazy. I did focus mainly on tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and radish and lettuce. So that was really the extent of what I did my first couple of years in gardening. And then what I couldn't get in my own garden, I would go to a local Amish community that was about 30 minutes north of where I was living. And I got in really good with several people up there, and I would buy tomatoes in bulk and cucumbers in bulk and fresh onions and pretty much everything that they had. I would go almost every other week or once a month at least throughout the summer months. And I would pick up as much as I could afford to pick up, and I would bring it home, and I would, you know, make salsa with it or salads. And I was posting these pictures on Facebook and sharing with my family and friends. And my aunt, she had been into food preservation for a while and really into homesteading for a while. And I didn't know that about my aunt. I was pretty close with my aunt forever, but I didn't realize that she was kind of into all of that. And I don't know that she realized I was into it. But I think she saw some of the things that I was doing. And one day I came home from work and there was a box on my front step. I was like, this is weird. I didn't order anything. So I pick it up and I go inside and I open it, and it was a Presto pressure canner. And I was like, this is awesome. And it was from my aunt. And so she bought me my first canner, and I started canning some of the stuff that I got from the Amish. And then she surprised me with a food dehydrator as well. And so then I started dehydrating food. And that was really the beginning of what I call the rabbit hole that I went through with homesteading. And so I started researching a lot more. I read some books. I also, you know, I joined a few groups on Facebook. And then I really started looking into homesteading and growing food and preserving food on YouTube. And so there were several channels at the very beginning that I was watching and kind of learning from. And it seemed like the more I watched their videos, the more it felt like, yes, this is the image that I've had my whole life. This is that picturesque, simple life, you know, being frugal, making house a home, growing your own food, being responsible for preserving your food through the winter, and just being a really good steward of the land and being as self-sustaining as you can possibly be. And so I started watching these, you know, every night when I would get home from work, as I'm doing dishes or cleaning up before bed, I would watch a few videos and I would be taking all of these notes. And so this is about 2015 was really when I first started coming up with the idea of My Lilac Hill. I made a Facebook group, and I called it Homestead Dreaming at the time, because that was kind of what I thought I was gonna name my channel. Because at that time, I was in my early 20s. I was single, living on my own, working a full-time job. I had no money to buy a farm, but I was homesteading in the sense of I was learning as much as I possibly could during that time and doing as much as I possibly could with what I had. So I was living in a house at that time. I did have a yard big enough to garden. So I was gardening, I was canning, I was dehydrating. I learned how to make my own laundry soap. I learned how to make regular soap, really focusing on being frugal and trying to save money for land. And so I created this Facebook group because I wanted to throw all of the homesteading related posts into one area, because at that time homesteading was still really not popular. It's gained a lot of popularity in the last couple of years, but back in 2015, homesteaders were the people that everybody made fun of. They said, oh, you've got your tinfoil hat, or stop wasting time growing food because you can just go to the grocery store and get it. It was something that most people mocked at that time. And so I didn't feel comfortable putting it on my regular Facebook page. So I just made a group, and I didn't even have any members at the time. I just wanted to put it all in there so that I could see my progression and I could track what I was doing. And it was really just a record keeping thing for me. So I called it Homestead Dreaming. And as I was dreaming and I was taking notes, I mean, I still have like 30 notebooks that I filled with notes on what I want to do on my homestead, where I want to take it, how I'm going to make money to do this. And it was something that really consumed every aspect of my free time. And so as I was doing all of that, I came up with the name that is now the name of my business, the name of my homestead, My Lilac Hill. And if you want me to tell you the story on the name, I can do that, but that's gonna have to be another video. This one will probably end up being long enough as it is. But if you do want to know the story behind the name, let me know and I'd be happy to do that for you. But yeah, I came up with the name and all of these ideas for a business that I wanted to start. And this business was going to be how I was going to get a farm. I was going to start this business, save as much money as I could while I was living in a small house in town, and I was eventually going to be able to buy my farm. And for years and years and years, it was my goal. I was saving money, I was going to buy a house, I was going to buy a farm. And it just seemed like I would get close so many times. I would get so close so many times. And it was taken for whatever, something would happen in life that I just completely did not expect. And then it was like back at square one. And looking back, I see it a little bit differently, but at the time I was getting so angry. I was feeling so defeated, and I was just like, this is not right. I have been so passionate about this my whole life. I work hard, I save my money, like this is my dream, and I get so close and then it's just gone. And now looking back, I see it as, being tested. How bad did you really want it? Are you gonna keep going? If you want it so bad that you're willing to wake up every day and continue going to a job that you don't like to save money so that you can live your dream one day. But at the time, I just was having myself a little pity party. I was mad that it wasn't working out. And I could see all of these other people that had two incomes coming in, or who were left a farm and then sold it because they didn't want it. And I was just like, I want this so bad and I can't get it. And all of these other people who just have it handed to them and they don't appreciate it, or these people who have it handed to them and they don't want it, so they sell it. And it was just so frustrating and discouraging to me. But now that I am where I am so thankful for that time, because it truly showed me that this is the only thing I want to do with my life. And it's the only thing that I can see myself doing for the rest of my life. Sure, I could go and continue to work an office job, if I had to support my son and myself, and, I'll do it. I have to do it. But it's not my end goal. It's not my dream. But what keeps me going is knowing that one of these days I am going to have that farm, and my business is starting to take off. And at some point it is going to be at a point where financially I don't have to work a full-time job anymore. And so I'm so thankful for that 7-year span that was just like I would get up and then immediately fall smack on my face, because it made me so much stronger, and it just proved to me that this is it. This is it for me. This is what I am meant to do. This is my calling. And I believe that there is a lot of us out there that are like that. And so I want to encourage you that if you're in that season that I was in, where it's like no matter what you do, you cannot get ahead, keep pushing, keep trying, you will get there. You just have to keep working. So to get back on track just a little bit, between about 2015 and 2019-ish, I was really just focused on building as many skill sets as I possibly could. I was renting. I did not own a home. As much as I wanted to own a home, it did not pan out for me on a number of occasions. But I was learning how to knit. I was learning how to bake bread. I started sourdough. I started cooking as much as I could from scratch. I started trying to make my own laundry detergent. I made my own toothpaste. I just started learning as many things as I possibly could, and I started collecting as many books on homesteading, on farming, on financial freedom, just everything I could think of to learn. I really just dove headfirst into it. And I lived in a house in a small town at one point in time, and then I moved back towards the Kansas City area. I had been living closer to the University of Missouri where I had gone to college. I lived out there for about 7 years, and then in 2017 I just missed my family so much, and so I moved back to the Kansas City area. And at one point I lived in an apartment, and then I've had a couple of different houses. But every home or apartment that I lived in, I tried to do as much as I possibly could. Even when I lived in the apartment, I had something growing to eat on my balcony. I had lettuce, I had a couple tomatoes, I had some peppers. I had something going at all times. And so that's why I say I've been homesteading for as long as I have, because for me, and everybody seems to have a different opinion on this, but for me, homesteading is really more of a mindset. It's a way of life. It's kind of how you go about things. Are you trying to be as self-sufficient as you can? Are you building a pantry or a larder? Are you raising animals? I'm currently not, and not every homestead does. And at the house I'm at now, I could technically raise chickens. I think I've said this in another video, but I choose not to because so many people around me do, that it's easier for me, rather than building a coop at a rental property that I'm gonna have to take down later, I'll just support somebody around me that is growing chickens for eggs, because at least I know where those eggs are coming from. They're farm fresh, and you know, I would just rather support them. But like I said, homesteading is more of a mindset in my opinion. And so I've just been learning as much as I can and doing as much as I can in every situation that I'm in. And I think that there's a lot of people in that boat. And some people may never leave that boat. They may never live on a farm. They may never really raise animals of their own or go out and milk their own goats or cow every morning. And that's totally fine. They can still be considered a homesteader if this is the way of life that they really like. So I think that, again, there's different schools of thought on that, but that's kind of my definition of homesteading. And it can look so differently from one homestead to another. But I think that we're kind of all in it together, and the homesteading community has really grown over the last few years, and I love seeing that. And then I also think that there's a little bit of a difference between homesteading versus farming. And I don't know if I've really even determined the best definition for each, but to make it as simple as I can, I think homesteading is done on a much smaller scale. And most of the time, now I did turn my homesteading efforts into a business, but I think most of the time, and the majority of homesteaders don't have the intention of having a business, or if they do, it's, you know, selling just a few things that they're making on the farm just to kind of bring in a little supplemental income, which is what I'm doing right now. But my plan for my business is to expand much further beyond that. And I don't think a lot of homesteaders have that in mind. Whereas when I think of farming, and again, I kind of think a little bit more on the lines of commercial, but not every farm is a commercial farm. There's small family farms, there's regenerative farms, which regenerative farms are my favorite farms. But I think of farming more as like a real business, and you know, raising to sell commercially or raising on a much larger scale, row crop or, cow-calf production or feedlots and things like that. And I kind of do separate farming and homesteading. I don't agree that they're the same thing. Some people say that it's all the same. I don't agree with that, but I would consider myself more of a homesteader than a farmer at this point, even though my whole life I had thought I'm gonna be a farmer. I'm so passionate about farming, and there are so many farming aspects to homesteading, but homesteading is so much more than farming. So that's kind of why I consider myself more of a homesteader. And so like I said, during that time, I was really just learning as much as I possibly could and taking notes and filling all of these notebooks with all of my ideas for my business. And then in October of 2020, I finally just took a leap and was like, I am tired of this being I'm gonna do this one day, I'm gonna do this now. And so I finally turned my dream into reality and formed the LLC, My Lilac Hill LLC, so that I could officially be in business and start kind of operating in that sense. And my plan at the time was that a CSA program, or community supported agriculture program, would be my first kind of venture into business. And I did run my first CSA program in 2021. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail on it just because I do keep my life private off of YouTube as much as I can. I share all of my homesteading stuff and my business stuff, but there were some things that happened in my personal life that really got in the way of my business that very first year. I did still do my best and try to run that program as best as I could, but it didn't go as well as I had hoped, which I think the first year in business, it's that way for a lot of people. And I don't regret starting it. I am so proud of myself for jumping in and still pushing through and trying to do as best a job as I possibly could, given the circumstances, because I think the best way to get started is to just do it. And also I learned so much in that first year that I can now take into the next chapter and journey of my business and grow and evolve. So I 100% do not regret doing that. However, it was the most challenging year of my life. Mentally exhausting, physically exhausting. Halfway through my CSA program, I ended up getting really, really, really sick with the virus and ended up having to cancel my CSA program. So it was not what I wanted. I ended up having to refund people, and it didn't go well. But I had a blast, and I did have positive feedback from the majority of my customers, so that part was helpful, and I have every intention of doing it again. Now in 2022, I did not run my CSA program because I moved. So I moved the week of Christmas 2021, and that's where I'm at now. I'm out on a farm. It is not my farm, I rent. But I am out in the country, I'm out on a farm, I can grow a big vegetable garden, and it is literally my dream. And it is the first house I have lived in that has felt like a home since I moved out of my parents' house when I was 18. So it has been a really long time. I was 30 when I moved in here. So to go from 18 years old to 30 and never feeling like you have a home, just kind of moving from one apartment to another house, college life. But I finally felt like I was at home, and I have thoroughly loved this last year of living out here. But because I had just moved in December of 2021, I did not want to run a CSA program in 2022 for a number of reasons. Again, 2021 was the worst year of my life. So I was just mentally and emotionally exhausted and drained, and I needed a year off. Another reason I did not want to do it is because my CSA program, or at least the way I ran it the first year, I may not end up doing that again in subsequent years, but the way I ran it the first year is I collected the money from my members up front, and that's how most CSAs are ran. And then they were able to get their produce for 14 weeks, or that was the plan, throughout the growing season. So having just moved to a new property, and I knew I was going to be able to garden that next summer, but I didn't know what the soil was going to be like. I didn't know after moving, which was very expensive. I didn't know if I was going to have the finances to do it. So I just was like, this is another thing that I need to just realize I need to take a break. It's the best thing for me. So I took a year off from my business. I didn't sell anything. I really didn't work on the business. I spent that entire year working on myself, getting myself back to a place where I felt good enough to continue doing my business. And I focused on spending as much time with my son and my family as possible. And that was the best thing I could have done for me, for my son, for my family, just for everybody. And I am so glad that I was able to do that. The reason I was able to do that is because I worked a full-time job. So my business is not my main stream of income, at least not yet. It is my goal, but I'm not there yet. So for those of you who are like, oh yeah, it must be nice to own your own business and not have to, work your office job anymore, that's not the case for me. So I hope that I'm not giving you that idea. My business is on the side, I guess, at this point. It's what I do in my free time, which, being a single mom, I do have a boyfriend, so I'm not single in that sense, but we don't live together, we don't share finances. So when I'm at home with my son, it's just me here. So doing that and working full time, it doesn't leave a whole lot of time for the business, but I am trying really hard in the evenings, which is why you can kind of see it's dark now. My son's in bed. That's kind of when I work on my business. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm just kind of doing the best that I can. So I hope that that's encouraging for those of you out there who are also just kind of in the trenches right now. So I did not run my CSA program in 2021. I didn't really do anything on social media in 2021. I just really dove into my faith and my family and working on myself, building that community around here. When I moved, I joined a church just up the road from me. I can actually see it from my house. And I have really loved getting to know everybody in that church. And again, I finally feel like I'm home. This has been the best year of my life. And my son is so much happier here in the country. He gets to run around, and I have a long gravel driveway that's off the road. So I have no fear of him, getting hit by a car or anything. So he gets to just run and be a little boy out in the country. And it has just been so incredible to watch. And it has really refreshed me. So now going into 2023, I am really ready to ramp up this business. All that being said, I'm saying I'm gonna ramp up my business in 2023. I still haven't exactly explained what my business is, other than, I ran a CSA program once. So my business right now is technically online content creation. I go to Homestead Management Binder, which I just posted a video about. Be sure to check that out before that sale ends, by the way. But I do have that on my Etsy as a digital download, and then also on Amazon as a physical bound book. And then I have my various social medias. I have a TikTok, I have Pinterest, Instagram, and obviously YouTube. And then I run a garden club on Facebook. So technically right now, at this moment, that's what my business is. While I have all of that going on, I'm obviously still doing my homesteading skills. I'm cooking from scratch. I'm keeping up with my bread making. I did do some canning this year. Granted, I didn't can as much as I would have liked to, but I'm still working on all of that in the background. Now, where I want to take my business, it's gonna have to happen in several stages. I have a 10-year plan for my business. I've had a business plan written out for several years now, and I've got all kinds of pictures and diagrams, and it's like a whole book. And that's kind of what I'm using to fuel myself and to guide myself on what I need to do each year. Which at the end of this year, I will do another video that goes over my goals for next year. But to just give you kind of a broad sense or idea on where I'm taking this, I don't want to give a whole lot of details right now, just because I'm just not ready to go public with everything that I have planned. There's some financial things that need to happen first, but it's a homestead. It's just an all-around homesteading business. So I do plan to run some sort of a CSA program in 2023. I'm doing it completely different than I had ever thought I would do it. I'm not collecting any money up front, which is what most CSA programs would do. And I'm just gonna grow a big garden, assuming that I do have members, and try to sell baskets as I have them available. I just feel after that first year and things not going according to plan, and after taking a year off, this is probably just what's gonna work best for me this year. In subsequent years, I'll change that format again. But I wanna grow a massive garden this year. And so I do plan on selling produce in that fashion. And another thing that I'm doing a little differently this year with the CSA program is I'm really not advertising it, at least not until, I start doing the gardening in the spring. And the reason for that is because, again, my plan is to just grow a big garden and sell what I have when I have it, and I'll post that on some local forums and in my community. This year my CSA program is not going to be something that I am like dependent on that income. It's just something to kind of start getting back into the swing of things and start building that community base again. But it's not like my main driver like it will be in future years. What else I plan on doing this year, I'm going to continue with my online content creation. So I have some digital downloads that I'm doing on Etsy. I have some farming related like flashcards for, I have a toddler, so that's kind of the age group that I'm leaning towards. And then I do have my homestead book. I am currently writing a book that I'm publishing myself, but hoping to have that out soon. I don't have a whole lot of details on that for you right now, but the closer I get to having that released, I will definitely let you guys know. So in addition to the CSA and my online content creation and writing and doing more YouTube videos and being more consistent with that so that I can kind of grow that community. And speaking of the community, and especially the YouTube community, I have thoroughly enjoyed the homesteading YouTube community from day one, from the day that I discovered it way back in 2015, 2016. I'm not even exactly sure when I found my first YouTube video, but it was somewhere in 2015 or 2016. It has just been something that has fueled my passion. I actually got rid of cable TV because all I was watching was homesteaders on YouTube. And now they have the Abundance Plus network, which I do subscribe to as well. And it's just something I am so passionate about. In interviews, they often ask you like, what is something that you could talk about nonstop for like 2 hours? And my answer is always homesteading. Homesteading is something that I can and do talk about at every given opportunity. The YouTube community has been just such an inspiration for me. So many people out there there's just so much knowledge out there, and we can all learn from each other. No matter what stage of homesteading you're in, you still have a lot you can learn. It's just one of those things that you're never gonna stop learning. And that's another reason I really love it, because I get bored easily. That's my oven. I'm baking bread, so I gotta go get that. I'll be right back. Okay, got the bread out. So what I was talking about was the YouTube community and how much it has really fueled my passion. And in those moments where it's just hard, and homesteading has a lot of those moments, gardening has a lot of those moments, farming has a lot of those moments, seeing what other people are doing, or just seeing that they're also struggling. I love the channels that they bring you in for the good and the bad. It just really is like, okay, I'm not the only one. It's not just, oh, poor pitiful me that this happened to. Like, this, it's okay. We can persevere. We can get through it. So the YouTube community has really just been instrumental in me continuing forward. So building my YouTube channel is definitely a priority for me this year. And I have really just started trying to get consistent in the last month. So I've been trying to post 2 to 3 videos a week since about a month ago. And just in doing that, my subscriber count has tripled. So it's super encouraging to me. I really hope you guys are enjoying what you're watching. And I have gotten several emails and comments and just, tips and tricks on what other people are doing or what's worked for them, or just hearing that they're liking what I'm putting out and telling me stories about their homesteading efforts. And I have really loved building that community with you guys. So if you haven't emailed me, but you want to, my email and all of my contact information is in my description box below. Definitely check it out. I love hearing from you guys, and it's just really encouraging for me to continue putting out the content because, like I said, I'm not just like a stay-at-home mom. I work, and when I get home, then I take care of my son by myself. Now, I do have a co-parenting arrangement with his dad, so every other weekend he goes with his dad for a few days. And so during those days, I really, really work hard on trying to get content put out and scheduled and things like that. But it's difficult to work full-time and to take care of a toddler on your own. And don't get me wrong, it is so much fun and so rewarding, but it's a lot of work. And so then on top of that, to be trying to build a business, it's exhausting. Again, it's worth it. It is so worth it, but it is exhausting. But really hearing your guys' comments and your stories and you guys encouraging me is really, really motivating me to continue. So I just wanted to thank you for that. I've really loved reading those emails. There's several of you that have been emailing me and I just love it. But building my YouTube channel really is a goal for me this year. I would really, really like to start doing a weekly live stream. And maybe at some point I will start doing that. I don't have time right now, but at some point I will do that. But beyond just the CSA and growing a garden and my content creation and YouTube, where am I planning on taking this thing? Well, like I said, it's not that I can't tell you. I could tell you every detail of my plan, but I'm just not going to. I've had this plan written out for several years, and it is quite extensive. It's going to be, I do plan on having a very large CSA at some point in time. My goal is about 5 years from now to really start having a lot of this falling into place. And over these next 5 years, I'm basically just step by step going through my checklist on how to get there. And I have everything written out. I have a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 1-year plan, and in that 1-year plan, I have it broken down every month, every week, and every day for the next 365 days. So I have really put a lot of thought and work and hours and hours of note-taking and research into this. So I really do hope that you guys will stick along for the journey. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of work, but I'm so excited for it. And to give you just kind of an idea, I am really working on paying down my debt so that I can save money and buy land of my own. I do live out on a pretty big farm right now, but this is not my farm. I rent, and I will not be living here forever. At some point I will move. So it has always been my goal for my business to have its own piece of land that is not my home. So that's what I'm working towards. Last year, I did a really good job of saving money and paying down a pretty big portion of my debt. I have student loans and things like that. So I did focus on that pretty heavily last year, and I'm so glad that I did because it's cut my monthly expenses to a point where now things are really seeming possible for me. Whereas before it was like, man, I'm just never going to get ahead. So if you are in that process of paying down debt, stick with it and keep going. I still have a decent amount to pay down. My goal is to have about 75% of that paid down by the end of 2023. It's possible, but it's going to be tough. So that's one thing I'm really, really focusing on. That way I can, if I'm able to do that, I'm really going to be able to get a jump start on everything else that I have planned. So again, my plan is to pay down that debt and save some money for land. Now with that land, what I plan to do, and again, I'm not going to give you all of the details, but I plan on having a retail location. That way my CSA members have one place that they can come and pick up their produce basket during the season. There's some year-round gardening efforts that I want, some season extension that I want to incorporate as well. And I really just want this place to be an amazing place for my community. I want it to be a place where people can come with their families and bring a picnic lunch and sit out in my beautiful gardens and just enjoy the simpler life. And the reason I want to do this is because I remember when I was in my journey and just kind of getting started and just feeling like I am never going to get there. I am never going to be able to go out in my backyard and eat in my garden. I'm never going to be able to be on a farm or see animals every day, and I'm never gonna be able to milk my own cow, or it just felt like I was never gonna get there. And I want to have a place in my community, especially with homesteading becoming so popular for a number of reasons. But I just really want to have a place where people in my community that maybe live in the city and they don't have the financial means, or they don't have the desire to have a farm of their own, but they like the beauty that farming can bring. I want to have a place for them to come to. I want to have a wholesome place that has family as the focus. One of the components of my logo for my business says family, farming, and fun. That's what I want. That's what my Lilac Hill is. Family, farming, and fun. So I want a place where my community can come together, and even if it's just for a couple hours on a Saturday afternoon, where they can go and they can escape the hustle and bustle of the city and just enjoy being outside, being in nature as it was intended. And so that's really my driving force, is the community behind it. I really want a place for my community. I want to be able to give back to my community. And one of the ways I want to be able to give back to my community is, at some point, I'd love to have an internship program where, people that are in, like high schoolers that are in FFA and they want to learn how to garden, but they live in the city and they don't have the means, they can come out and they can work with me and learn hands-on. And I'll have animals that they can learn hands-on with. And I want to have a couple of different layers of my internship program. I want to have high school level and I want to have college level. Even if you're not in college, but you're in that kind of age group and you just want to learn, I want to be able to do that. I want to host workshops. I want to bring in other people. I'm, like I said earlier, you're never going to know everything about homesteading. You're just not. You're constantly going to be learning. There's always going to be somebody who knows more in one area than you do. And community is so important to me. So I want to have a place where other homesteaders can come and teach workshops on something that, maybe they're more knowledgeable about than I am, and I can learn from them. So it's really just kind of bringing in all of my different hobbies into one business. And yes, I do plan on it eventually being what pays my bills and puts food on my table, so where I can quit my full-time job and just be home and enjoying my family and running my business. And I would love to have some employees that I can help out. They want to do this, but they can't afford land of their own, but maybe they can come work for me and they can love where they work and feel like they have purpose in what they're doing. So that's kind of my big vision for it, and really all I want to divulge at this time. But that's the big picture for me and what I'm working towards, and why I'm staying up so late working on things at night when my son is asleep. And you know, it's worth that to me. It's worth me losing a little bit of sleep now. It's worth me being tired and being a little stressed out now, so that I could do that later. Now, yeah, I could work on this when my son is awake, but for me, family comes first. And so, especially because I do have to share him every other week, when I have my son with me, I'm focused on him. If he's asleep, then I'm focused on my business. But otherwise, you know, it's a balancing act. It's really hard to get it all done sometimes, but it is possible. And that's another thing I want to do, is I want to show people that if you want something bad enough and you are willing to put in the work, you can get it. And no, I don't have everything now, but compared to where I was even just last year, I have grown so much with my business, my homesteading skills, and I am so incredibly close to being able to have everything I've ever dreamed of. And that's another reason I want to put it all out on YouTube, is my Lilac Hill is going to be the legacy that I leave behind for my children, for my grandchildren, and I want to document it. Not only for myself, so that I can see how far I've grown and I can really look back and appreciate all the work that I put in, but so that my children can see it, so that my family that lives out of state, or even, you know, in state, but far enough away that we don't get to see each other much, they can kind of keep up with what I'm doing. And I really do hope that it inspires somebody else that may be kind of in the more beginning phases of things, or they're trying to do the same thing that I'm trying to do in their area. And, you know, maybe they're getting tired and it's midnight and they're working on their business and they just want to go to bed, but you know, maybe they see me doing it too. And it's like, okay, it's worth it, you know? So that's kind of why I started homesteading and kind of my journey and where I plan to take it. You know, I see so many other homesteaders in various parts of the country doing very similar things, and it is so, so, so inspiring to me. Really, probably the one that sticks out the most and the one that most people would relate to is Roots and Refuge Farm. I could not be more excited for where they're at in their journey. And, you know, sure, there's a little bit of jealousy, wishing I was at that stage too, but I'll get there. And watching them is giving me the encouragement, like, yeah, it's hard. And Jess and Jeremiah, they talk about it, that it's hard, it's tiring. There's things that you have to sacrifice in order to do this. But watching them and seeing just how much they've grown and seeing like, yeah, it's possible and you can do it. You just have to have faith and you have to keep pushing. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm, you know, a little behind them on their journey. And I don't have, what I want to do with my business is not exactly the same as what she's doing. I would love to go to the Carolina Homestead Exchange and meet her and meet Jeremiah and see the fruits of their labor. And I hope that one day I'll be able to do that. But my business is a little bit different. And one of the great things about it is we can all do it. You know, there is room for everybody in homesteading. There is. And I want to encourage you that there is room for everybody here. And I think most homesteaders would agree, we want you here. We want you doing this. We love this life. We think it is the best way of life. And we want to see you do it too. So I'm hoping that as I get further in my business efforts, you know, maybe at some point I can have Jess and Jeremiah come and teach a workshop. She is so much more knowledgeable in gardening than I am. And I've learned a lot from her. And you know, there's so many aspects of homesteading that she just has more experience because she's in the trenches of it right now. She's doing it. So I would love to meet her and Jeremiah. But that's kind of why I'm making this video, is to encourage more of you. If you're watching her journey or you're seeing somebody else's journey and you're like, I want to do that too, do it. Do it in your area. Make homesteading explode. I would love to see that. We've already kind of done that in the last couple of years, and I would love to see it just go that much further. I would love to see everybody growing their own food and not dependent on a grocery store. And I would love to see everybody drinking raw milk, and, you know, unless you're allergic or, you know, you have other reasons that you can't. But I would just love to see everybody appreciate this life the way that I do and see the beauty in this life the way that I do. So throughout the next, several months until we get into more of the gardening thing, probably what you're going to be seeing is content like this, or, content in the kitchen, because that's what I'm doing in the winter months. In the winter months, I'm reading, I'm note-taking, I'm really working on the business, and I'm cooking, I'm baking bread, and doing kind of all of the inside stuff and preparing for spring. Now, come February, I'll start seed starting. And by March, I'm really working on getting garden prep done. So first week of May, I'm ready to plant. So you'll be seeing all of that. I do plan on filming as much as possible. Again, I am making YouTube a priority this year. So I hope that you'll stick around so that you can see all of that. But over the next couple of weeks, kind of what you can expect. I have several videos lined up for the next few weeks. I plan on going over all of the seeds that I've purchased so that I can plant in the garden next year, and just kind of telling you what I plan to grow and how much I plan to grow of each thing. And then also I'm going to do kind of a recap on how 2022 went and what my goals for 2023 are. So, stick around and you'll see all of that. But I hope that if this video just encourages one person to dive into their dream, it will be worth it. I'm a dreamer. I've always been a dreamer. I've always had this massive plans, and I can see things that people just don't really see. Like when I moved out here and I looked at the area that I was allowed. I am renting, so there's a certain area that the tenant is allowed to work with, and I could just envision all of these things. And so this coming spring, you'll get to see me kind of implementing those. I didn't have the finances to do that last year. I was more focused on paying down debt, but this year you're going to see it. And so I hope that you'll stick around for that. And it's just going to be so much fun. I'm seeing my vision in my head, and I know that it's going to come into fruition. And so I just hope that there's somebody out there watching this that is thinking to themselves, okay, maybe I'm not so crazy for dreaming this. Maybe I really can do it. And granted, I'm not where I want to be 100%, but I am way further along than I was last year, or especially in 2015, 2014, when I started kind of diving down the rabbit hole. So I just want to encourage you that you can do it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I actually just heard the oven go off. It is my second round of bread. I'm getting ready to go to another family Thanksgiving tomorrow. So I was baking some bread tonight, and that was the last round. It's done. It needs to come out. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here. I hope it wasn't too scatterbrained. Maybe not the best storyteller, but I did want to get this put out there. And I will try to throw in some pictures for you while I'm editing. So hopefully that will work out. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm so glad that you're here. I hope that you'll subscribe and follow on this journey. And I will catch you in the next video.